This is Cup Theory Part 2. And I know this is probably unexpected because I don't often follow up on the Part 2s and Part 3s in as quick of a time as I'm doing now. And I usually end up covering the topics in another video, so I don't really feel the need to post the Part 2s, but this time I'm going to do Part 2. So, Part 2 of Cup Theory is understanding this. Do a little recap of Part 1. So, Cup Theory is basically this. When a woman, she's going to have her self-esteem, and it's going to be attached to her internalized definitions of masculinity and femininity and how she pours out and reciprocates energy. And these things play a big part in how a woman interacts with a man, or what type of man she's looking for at that point in her life. So this cycle is usually what the gentleman gigolo complex is built on. Understand this, the cup theory, parable of the cup. When we're talking about the parable of the cup, how it typically works is like this. When a woman's cup is low, she is in survival mode. A low cup means survival mode. That's when she is in a place where she desires validation and attention, and to be given a certain level of security, or to fit into societal norms, right? That's where she's at a place where the only place she could turn to is her social programming. And when she's in that particular place, validationally, as far as her self-esteem, then what she typically desires is a beta man, a beta male. She desires a man who's going to who's going to simp for her, because she doesn't see that value in herself. So she needs to feel that value given to herself through a man pouring that into her. But she is not going to feel necessarily lust and desire for this man on a primal level. And if she does, it comes from a place of where her standards are at in that moment. So as her cup gets filled up, that man's going to pour into her cup, pour into her cup, pour into her cup. And she's being reserved sexually. Often this is a big aspect of it. When her cup gets to a high enough place to where he feels like it's time for her to reciprocate, the way she's going to respond is the fact that he was being feminine and submissive with her program. She doesn't respect him, right? And she already wasn't super attracted to him, or she wouldn't have been able to have as much sexual self-control. So when he finally gets to that place, that's where that energy is full within her, that validation. But although it's full, she's not attracted to or doesn't respect the man who poured into her enough to reciprocate with him. So that's when she's typically going to pour that into a sexual alpha male. But the issue is this: if that sexual alpha male tries to pour into her cup emotionally too much, then she is going to feel like he is giving her validation that she doesn't deserve, and then she's going to see him as a beta male, right? And then she's going to lose attraction, lose interest, and leave that situation, right? So this is typically how it works. One thing I have to say is this, and also another thing I'll say is this, before I go on to the next point. When a woman is in a place where her cup gets diminished, by pouring out validation. That's her submissiveness, that's her femininity, that's her sexuality. When she's pouring those things out, that's giving energy from herself to a man, right? So when I talk about a dom sub dynamic, basically the submissive is the party who has to give their cup to the other party to get what they want, right? So a dom, primary receiver of pleasure, the primary giver of pleasure, and the secondary receiver of pleasure, and the primary receiver of control and ego gratification, and the secondary giver of control and ego gratification. What does that mean? When I say the secondary receiver of pleasure, the primary giver of pleasure, I'm not just talking about the physical pleasure of sex. I'm talking about the emotional pleasure of feeling like you're dealing with somebody who you put on a pedestal. That's the halo effect. That's feeling increased desire for them. That's being able to be denied desire, and that's also being in a position where they can affect your emotions, right? Affect your emotions through the way that they interact with you. and that the effect that they have on your emotions, it can contribute to you desiring to do what they want you to do. Now, get what I'm saying here. Get what I'm saying here. So uh, when I'm talking about dom sub dynamics and how that relates to the cup, let's say that a man can be submissive too. A man can be a beta male, right? Now the difference is this. Let's say that man is pouring out his cup, which is his time, his attention, his energy, his resources, validation. He can be pouring that out to a woman. While he's pouring that out to a woman, she's soaking that up, right? And then for some women, if they have good character, typically the way they'll go about it is they'll break the dude off some pussy, right? Or they get into a relationship. They reach the point she wants to reach to. Or she feels like he knows that she likes him for real. That he likes her for real, right? Not that she likes him, but that he likes her for real. Or they get married or whatever it is. Then typically a woman will open up sexually, but she's not going to be on her full sexual primal instincts, right? Similarly, as a man, when you move this type of way, you're typically going to be the type of man who's going to have premature ejaculations, right? You know, the thing about it is this: when you're submissive as a man, you tend to have premature ejaculations because you're putting the woman and the pussy on so much of a pedestal that it has a strong effect on your desire level and how much pleasure you receive and how ready you are before it's time to do it. It's put on a pedestal in your mind regardless of how good it actually is. But when you're dominant, that tends to have the other effect to where you can last as long as you want to and then get your shit off. And that's when you get wrinkles to your sex game, when you're moving in a dominant way. But see, where this is different is for a woman, a man coming fast is probably going to keep her from being able to have an orgasm at all. Get what I'm saying with this, right? Get what I'm saying with this. Then she's typically going to be the type of woman who only has orgasms from oral sex or toys, right? Because when it comes to penetration, that validational aspect, it plays a big part, and also the openness and relinquishing of inhibitions, it plays a big aspect of it. So she sets her rules, just gives the guy some pussy, and if she really likes him, or if he does well, or if he's a little bit more sexual than she was anticipating, she'll give him some head. And if his desire is too high for her when she's in that position, then she may give him head to supplicate for the difference in sex drives. Right? Now, let's flip the positions. Let's flip it. When you're a man and you're in the dominant position, being able to last longer where your party's coming faster, what that does is it gives a woman the opportunity to have multiple orgasms. It gives her the opportunity to get more into her feminine submissive energy, right? It gives her the opportunity to experience losing control. And then your job is to be able to lead properly from that place. But she has to be there first. It's not a matter of you saying, okay, cool, well, I'm going to prove to her how well and how properly I can lead so that she can be in a position where she wants to feel that way. That's too logical. If that's too logical, it's just not going to stick with a woman, because something in her being, her social programming, is going to have an issue with that, and it's going to find some way to interpret that as wrong or toxic or evil in some way. And this is what ties into the whole cup theory. A woman's has to be at a certain place within her own security, to be feminine and submissive with a man, right? Because if she's trying to be feminine and submissive with a man, she hasn't met the standards for him to reciprocate pouring into her cup without her losing respect and attraction for the man, then it's just going to create a toxic cycle. It's going to create a toxic cycle because when her cup gets too low, she is going to need and require a man who can pour into her, right? She's going to need and require a man who can give her validation and attention and make her feel good about herself if she's very insecure. She's going to need that. When it comes time to be feminine and submissive, her ego is going to be so fragile that if you say anything that indicates criticizing her in any way, instead of receiving the criticism and learning and being better for it, the way she's going to respond, she's going to get defensive because her ego's hurt. And she wants to feel like she's right. That's where her ego is. She needs to feel right. She needs to feel innocent. She needs to feel like she can do no wrong. So she won't be open to correction. She won't be open to correction. And instead of her being lubricated with self esteem and being lubricated by her feminine energy in order for uh, in order for her to be lubricated to your masculine energy, which means if you get aggressive or sexual, that is something that will turn her on in a reactionary way. Like a good example of this is I always try to make sure when I'm having conversations with a new woman, I say bitch in the first conversation. Why? Because I have to see if her attraction and her submissiveness, her natural feminine energy, if it's receptive to my masculine energy in a way where she'll take things that others would find disrespectful as something that turns her on. Right? When a woman's cup is low, she's not hydrated enough. Her feminine energy isn't hydrated enough for her to be able to get wet. It's going to be dry. She's not going to have the ability with you, right? She's not going to have the ability with you. I'm just telling you right now. Now, this is the thing. That's what happens when she's dealing with the alpha male, right? At that point in time. So that means if you're too alpha, if you don't know when to give, and if she hasn't reached your standards yet, and you give in, then she's going to lose respect and attraction for you. So compromising will get rid of the respect and the attraction real quick. But it's still what she needs at the time. So you have to put yourself first. But if you already love the woman, let's say you're prematurely integrated, then you're going to have to play that game very close to the line about how much you're meeting the needs just when she needs it, regardless of her behavior, and how often you're treating her only according to her behavior. And you have to be consistent with it and set a basis for it. Because if you don't, then her self-esteem will get so low that she will come up with whatever she can mentally to explain her lack of attraction or lack of respect for you, her lack of trust for you. She feels low. She feels low, and at that place, she needs a beta male to come in and pour into her without expecting anything in return, right? Intrinsic reward. And she may or may not reward it with pussy. She might not. If her cup got real low, then that survival mode would say, okay, cool, he'll give me some of this attention, but I'm gonna have to break him off a little bit of something, right? I'm gonna have to break him off a little bit of something. And then she said, okay, cool, that's what she's gonna do to keep that attention around. And then she's gonna get her cup filled back up, or she's gonna wanna take control back over her sexuality, right? That's another thing. And when that happens, then she may be open to let that hurt go pussy, right? Where all of the energy that was poured into her, all that was poured into her cup, the sexual things as well when it comes to a beta male, because that's part of what he's pouring in her cup too. Sometimes he has his own fantasies, his own sexual ideas, ways he would like a relationship to work, but she just won't go for it, right? She won't go for it because that's how she views him, right? Because that's how she views him, she won't go for it, but that stuff is still in her head, so it's getting poured in and her cup is full. It's just that the man who filled her cup, she feels he's beneath her, right? In some capacity, whether it's his reasoning, whether it's his standing in life, whether it's his sexual prowess, whatever it is, she feels is beneath her standard. Something is beneath her standard. And because of this, trying to meet his standards is something that will feel like it's betraying herself or lessening herself for that man, instead of seeing his program as an improvement from where her previous mindset was. Right? So you got to understand this when it comes to cup theory, because a big part of it is dom sub dynamics. You know, a big part of prematurely integrated relationships are relationships where both parties wanted to play some role that was either masculine or dominant, or they both wanted to be submissive, or whatever was going on, they both took a perspective, personality, and mindset where they thought that because it was symmetrical, that it would work well when it really cancels out. Like, let's say both a man and a woman want to take the dominant role. And what I mean by dominant is just being a pleaser. That's what I mean. Let's say both of them want to take the other person to the heights of their pleasure. They're masculine in that way, right? Now, let's say that they both lower how they experience their sexual energy. Let's say they lower in their mind and they lower those experiences in order to kind of deaden their senses so that they can last longer, so that they can be more in control and bring the other person to a place of pleasure. When this happens, two people can, they can clash, right? I think this also plays a big part in the orgasm gap. When this happens, the two different people can kind of cancel out sexually and keep them from having sexual chemistry because they're both focused on wanting to please the other person for their own ego. So the man will be doing it, and he's like, well, I don't feel comfortable coming yet because she ain't came yet. She's going to be doing it, and she's going to be sitting there not even thinking about having an orgasm because she's thinking about trying to please you, right? She's too in her head she's for that. The thing about it is this, as a man, when you having sex, chances are you're going to get yours. It doesn't work like that for every woman. That's why I believe a man should be a dominant, because then you have the psychological effect that goes along with things in order to take her to those places, because it takes more for a woman to get there typically, right? Not necessarily for me, but it takes more for a woman to get there on average, right? Like, I think it takes a man an average of 4 minutes and a woman an average of 10 minutes to have an orgasm, right? It doesn't work like that in my experience, but that's what the average is. When that's what the average is, what you got to understand is that as a man, you can get yours regardless, but she can have way more many than you can have. And how many she can have way more of an effect on her in a way that makes her more attractive to you, right? This is what you got to understand. Now, I will say this too. You got to pour a little into her cup, and that's validation, but she has to earn that validation, right? So this is like if a woman's been behaving well, so you let her suck the dick, right? And she's been a very good woman to you. She's been very consistent. She's been trying to get with your program the best she can. And you're like, you know what? Hey, come suck this dick. Now she feels pleasure at the idea of being able to please you, right? That makes her feel like she did a good job. That gives her validation. Giving you head gives her validation. See, that turns her on. That doesn't turn her off because she earned that validation. She worked for it. If she had to put in work sucking your dick 20 minutes to get you to nut, trying different things, and then you had to give her instructions and she listened, right? And I ain't talking about no weak head. I'm talking about somebody who's skilled and trained, a trained assassin. But you still got them learning. You still got them on the ropes. You still got their mind stimulated. It's a different effect. I mean, that's a big aspect of what I mean by the cup theory, right? They're pouring into your cup, but she has to have enough in your cup to pour into yours in the first place. Before it even matters what standard you set, she has to have enough in her cup to pour into yours, right? She has to have enough on her own. That's a big aspect to cup theory. But do a quick recap. When her cup is real low, she wants a beta male. That's survival mode. When her cup gets full up more, then she goes into abundance mindset, where she wants an excitement. So it's commitment versus excitement. I mean, it's security versus excitement, depending on where her cup is. When she's submissive, she's pouring into your cup. As you set the standard, she pours back into yours. It can work the other way around. But for a woman, being dominant is going to have more of a negative effect on her sex life and more of a negative effect on how she views the man, because being submissive also includes wanting it and needing it, which can turn a woman off. And when it comes to that particular type of thing, you have to understand the respect and the desire level is very important. It's very important. Respect and desire, because those things will lower the attraction. As the attraction lowers, then after you pour into her cup, she's not going to want to reciprocate. So let's say we're looking at a man. You set your standard on a logical basis. She pours into your cup to the standard that you set. You reciprocate, right? And you reciprocate in a way where now she feels like she earned it. Then you can pour into her cup with validation without that being something that hurts her, or that can, without that being something that hurts her attraction and respect for you. But it has to be there first, because if her attraction and respect ain't there for you, then everything that feels like you desiring her feels like pressure. Everything that indicates you being masculine and leading feels like pressure to go somewhere she don't want to go. Everywhere that feels like you're being aggressive or assertive, it's going to feel like you're being abusive, right? It's going to feel like you're hurting her, right? It's just like trying to put a big hard dick in a dry pussy. It's not that the act was wrong, and it's not that the consent wasn't there. It's that she wasn't aroused, right? She wasn't aroused. Because what you got to think about is this: as a man, your energy should be like a dick, like your sexual organ. You want to be big, hard, and you want to, you know, be somewhat soft to the touch but hard. You don't want to be cold and where nobody want to touch you. You want to be warm but hard, unmoving, stable. You know what I mean? These are the things that you want to be. You know, things that remind a woman of good dick. That's what big dick energy is, right? But for a woman, what's being feminine, what her energy should replicate, is being malleable, being firm fitting, right? Form fitting, being wet, which is emotional and lubricated, right? Which is being aroused, right? And what does being aroused does? It makes her able to receive your dominant masculine energy in a way that's pleasurable versus it feeling abrasive and chafing, cramping her style, that doing something that bothers her, right? That's a big part of cup theory. You got to understand this. So when we're talking about men being the dominant party, or women being the dominant party, but especially when we're talking about men being dominant party, this is why I think it's best that men take that position. So this cup theory.